And excuse me. And so this is the course evaluation checklist, and it's something that was developed by Canvas users. I don't know if you all have been to the Canvas community website, but it's an incredible resource. I mean, I guess Canvas has been around for probably over 10 years now, and so it's developed a really strong community of users, so that if you ever have any questions about Canvas, you can find them there. And that's where I found this course evaluation checklist, and it's divided up into I think 4 different sections. How to present course information. You're thinking about your course content. How do you assess your learners? And then course accessibility. And then within each of those sections, there are components that are organized by essential, best practices, are the 2-star components, and then exemplary, which are the 3-star components. And so the idea here is that the 1-star components you absolutely have to have in a class. For example, for the course information, you have to have a home page that just gives a brief description of your course. I have an example here of this message design course that I've been working on, where this is the home page where I introduced the overall goals of the course. I introduced myself, the goals, some of the main objectives, the modules that will be covered in the course, and then some information of assignments and grading and support. And so, I think that's probably something that all of you teaching have. If you have a course, then you have a lot of that information already in your syllabus. Excuse me. The second component of the how course information should be organized is the course navigation, which is another foundational element, which in Canvas we can control these links to the side. So, for example, if you want to get rid of any of these links, you can do that by going to Settings, Navigation, and let's just say, for example, that you aren't going to be using Lockdown Browser in your course. You can just click Disable and save that. And then you can see that Lockdown Browser has been removed. And so, that just really simplifies students getting around in your course, so that you only have links to the things that you're using. And I think we've all been to websites before where they're kind of overly complicated in terms of just too much navigation. The third foundational element is the key learning information, goals, learning objectives, course materials, books. Again, I think that that's a piece that you can, that a lot of you who already have courses have as a piece of your syllabus, or if you're designing courses, those are all necessary elements of any course. Class expectations, again, another foundational element where you set the expectations and just let the students know important rules of the course. Say etiquette within discussion boards, just important codes of conduct to follow, and so on. Another foundational element is contact information and a biography and information. And I think it's really important, especially with the fully online courses that we're working on, that the students feel connected with the instructor there, in the course, that there's this sort of area of research within e-learning called social practice. And it's about how do we develop relationships, how do we develop deep connecting relationships in an online environment. And, I think some of that is about, letting people know you, posting a picture, letting them know a little bit about your interests, not just research, but, if you like to ride a mountain bike or something, like so that they feel like, they might get to know you a little bit better, so they feel connected. And in that space, in a space where you feel more connected, you're more likely to learn. I mean, I think there's research that points to, that just being, really important part of e-learning. The course card, which provides sort of a visual representation of the course, is really important to be able to separate your course from other courses. And so, like I created this message design course card for this message design course, and I forget the dimensions of this particular image. Actually, they might be listed here in the document, but I can help you to create a course card that you like and you feel is representative of your course. But I think it plays into this other part of e-learning where attractiveness and consistency of design is important, just so that for just people gaining trust and just having the attractiveness to gain attention in the course. It's important for your course to contain institutional links if you're using them. For example, a link to the library. We recently added this UGHE library link, which I believe is in most courses. It may we're still sort of making sure of that, but I think it's added to all of the courses. And so Anthony's been adding library resources, e-journals, student study skill support, and a digital repository within this UGHE online library, of course, in order to support student learning. So if you're developing a course that has that requires these kind of ebooks or videos, then you'll need to let your students know that the UGHE library is available for them to be able to use. And so that's the course information, from the home page to the course card, contact information. And as you can tell, that all of these are listed as essential pieces of developing a course. And in my mind, these are I think they're fairly easy to develop. Like I said before, I think a lot of this is information that a lot of you already have if you have a course, so that I think that should not be that difficult for us to put together. Course content. The first course content piece listed here is copyright, which is of course important within higher education. We have to make sure that what we're using, correctly. And so Canvas has a guide to assist with understanding copyright resources. And the second foundational element here is the Canvas link validation. When you're working on a website, it's important to make sure that all of the links are working properly. And the way to do that is this: if you go to settings and just the validate links within the content, click on that. And what that does is just to make sure that, wherever there's a link, that link is actually connecting to the materials or the content that you want it to. I mean, I think, we're all familiar with visiting websites where links aren't working, and they might link to the wrong material. And so the Canvas course link validator, helps to make sure that, your course is working properly in terms of linking to the material that it's supposed to. So, and that's a pretty easy thing to do. It's just built into Canvas there. These next three pieces where we're looking at student-to-student interactions, student-to-teacher interactions, and student-to-content interaction. I think this is where, we start getting into more of like the creative designing aspect of putting a course together. And this is sort of where you get to be creative and just sort of explore technology tools that are out there, and also really think about how you want your students to interact, how you want to interact with them, how you want them to interact with the content. I've put together this document here, where that goes along with this presentation, where I look at some ways that you can start really thinking about how to really sort of think about the design aspects of your course, and just sort of the theoretical pieces that will help you to sort of understand how to do this. And so, some of the things to start thinking about are, well, what are the best practices for communicating with students in an online course? And there's a lot of material that's available, that within that document that I'm not going to go deeply into today, because this is more about the checklist. But there are ways to sort of help to create better discussions with students. Just as I think we've all been in, say, just person-to-person conversations that go a lot more in depth for some reason, and there are different sort of techniques and sort of approaches you can use to make sure that you're getting high quality discussions in your online environment, because part of these online courses, or a big part of the interaction is going to be in the discussion boards, and so that understanding how to really sort of maximize the potential of those environments is really going to be an important part of making sure that your course is successful. And so just here are a couple of examples. Rather than let students do all the talking, ask guiding questions, share a resource. Maybe you think there's a video that might be interesting that you could link within the discussion for them to look at and review. Or I've heard some other people that they will put a student in charge of the discussion for, say, a week, and have them try to guide the discussion. And so there are different techniques that you can use in terms of that. And so anyway, this is another one from EduCause. Convey clear expectations, adjust to the discussion board. Don't feel like you have to stick to the specific question. And so, so I've got some different resources within this, which I'll share with you, that are, like I said, related to this. And so, but I think this is these are, I think some of the more interesting pieces of this checklist, and some things that really are going to be interesting. It's for you to work with and try to design. So, and I have some materials, and I can certainly talk to any of you about any of those further. Making sure that the content is chunked into manageable pieces is another important piece. I think it's just the way that humans, we naturally learn information. We don't want all of it at once. It's like going to a buffet. You don't try to eat everything. I mean, you kind of pick what you want and just organize it, and so that it's manageable, and you can kind of take that approach. And so like Canvas uses this module approach. Of course, I think this is a place where you as professors can use your own language. I mean, you can call it topics or objectives, sessions, whatever you like. I think, depending upon, how you think your content or information should be organized. But usually, I like to think of these modules are organized around sort of an introduction to the content, and then some assignments, and then an assessment, so that those pieces are going to be an important part of any module. This piece here, this welcome, or let's get acquainted, I think that again, I think especially with these online courses, it's important to get people to know each other, to get them to know you, to feel comfortable. A part of that is setting up, some way, just a discussion board, for example, where you can sort of introduce yourself. I've put my bio on this web page, so that the students can get to know me, and so I think I recommend that to anyone who's putting together an online course, to have like a welcoming section. It's really important for that social practice piece. Personalized learning is another important piece of online learning. Do I have any examples here? I don't think I do. But that can sometimes be pretty tricky and create a lot of work for you. But I think, for example, one way that you can implement this would be with assessments, where you say would give your students different choices in submitting an assessment. Let's just say that you wanted them to analyze a project that had been implemented. I mean, maybe you would allow them to submit a video, a podcast, a written paper, so that students have a choice of which sort of how they would like to be assessed, and it also allows them to sort of create an assessment in a way that is interesting to them. And that's something that we can get into more at some other point. But these are the first. I just wanted to point out that these are the first of the best practices that that we've looked at so far. Have thoughtful naming conventions within your module structure, so that the links make sense. For example, this is just module 1, an introduction, introduction to this module, initial reading, message design collaboration. These two are discussion boards. so that, just be clear what the topic of these particular module sections are. This other recommendation here is to make sure that your modules have a clear beginning and end. And so, for module 1 here, I just created this brief introduction where, I just discuss what this module is about, go over the objectives. I have the readings and the different assignments and the grading criteria. And then I also have a summary of the module, so that you introduce them to the content, and then sort of summarize once it's all over. I think one helpful way to sort of conceptualize these modules is to think of them as book chapters, where you're introducing content, and then you have the students sort of interacting with the material in some way, with assignments or quizzes or discussions. And then, as most books do, there's a summary at the end, and I think, it's helpful to sort of think about, I think, the courses and the modules in that way, that they are very similar to the way that a textbook might be built. So, text headers and indentations are important, so that we know that this is the main header here, and then the rest of the material has been indented just 1 or 2 spaces over. There are opportunities for course feedback. I've added a module 1 feedback here. Actually, I don't know if I've added a question yet, but and that's another way I think that's easy to engage the student, make them feel like they're connected to the course. It can improve your own teaching online because you're receiving feedback, and you end up with a better course in the long run. And so, I think that's kind of an easy thing to add that can add a lot of quality to an online course. Where are we here? Text headers, course feedback. Okay, and that is an example of like an exemplary course, and I think it's a fairly easy thing to add. It's basically you're just adding a link to a discussion question, or maybe you could create a survey. So that's course feedback. Another exemplary course component here is setting up course completions or prerequisites. I'm never quite sure if I'm going to be able to pronounce that word correctly or not. And so if we go to modules here, you can see that I've set this up. The prerequisite is to cover the welcome to message design. And so that's another fairly easy thing to add, where if you just click on edit here next to your module title, you can just add a prerequisite that way. The only other prerequisite I have here is the welcome to message design. So again, another fairly easy thing to add to your Canvas course. And what prerequisites do is just to make sure that students complete certain work before they move on to the next. External tools, just make sure that they're relevant to the material that you're teaching, and you're not just sort of sending them outside of Canvas just for work that's not critical to the course. That when you do have an external link, that it's links back to the objectives of that course. The inline preview, Canvas has this ability to display, let me see if I can find it. That's not it. Okay, sorry, I'm looking for this link. Okay, I think this is it. So, if there are a couple ways that you can display readings or PDFs in Canvas. One is using this, what they call a auto open inline preview. And what this allows you to do is just to view PDF files within Canvas. So, that's really useful because, otherwise, the students have to download the PDF and then, open it on their own computer. And this sort of simplifies some of that how to deal with PDF files, because there's just so many, I think, PDF files in courses now that this can kind of make that whole process a little bit easier for us. Mastery paths in mastery paths in Canvas are honestly something that I'm not super familiar with, but what Canvas can allow you to do is to set up sort of these learning paths for students, so that if they're, say, deficient in one area, that it directs them to material or activities that might help them improve their learning. So that it's kind of set up automatically. And I think it's something that's, could be really useful, especially when we, are moving into these fully online courses, so that, if a student, say, gets below a certain grade on a quiz or an exam, that they're then directed towards more material to help help them with those deficiencies. And again, that's another exemplary addition. And so those are the course content pieces. I think, like I mentioned before, I think these are going to be sort of the more interesting design pieces that you put together. Maybe also this personalized learning. But I think that certainly, most of these checklist items are things that we can accomplish, working together to get these things done. Student assessment, of course, assessment is, critical piece of instruction. Detailed instructions are really need to be clear for students, so they know, what the, what are the expectations are. A variety of assessments too, of course, is helpful for students, so that you can see how they're understanding the material. In an online environment, sometimes it's not as easy as an in-class space to really know when students are following material. When you can't look them in the eye and sort of gauge if they're understanding the material or not. And so using different assessment approaches can help give you a better idea, whether it's a discussion board or an individual assignment or a quiz. And just, it's important to have different ways to sort of gauge what it is that, where their deficiencies might be again. But another way to make sure that you're not moving too far into the material and or to sort of gain an understanding of where they are is with these low stakes assessments, which, here are just some examples that you might use for sort of low stakes assessments, just to get, an idea of how they're dealing with the material without, just having like one exam, say, in a semester, or, like one or two major projects. I mean, these are like sort of, simple, small ways to sort of get a little bit of insight into, how they're doing. You could have journaling, surveys, just 1-minute reflections on some of the material. You could do that in a chat room or in a discussion board. And so, those are just a few, examples of sort of, assessment that isn't, too overwhelming or large, but still gives you some insight into where they are. And then, of course, summative assessments are, critical to really assessing how students are doing. And of course, these are, exams, final papers, final projects, and things like that. Let's see. Canvas has this option within their assignments called Speed Grader, which I don't think I have an example of that set up yet in this example course that I was working on. But what Speed Grader allows you to do is to provide individual feedback to students. And so that, say, within a quiz, you can just click on the student responses, you can grade them, and provide written feedback so that, you can have more personalized feedback for the learner, which again plays into a lot of that about, connection and things like that. Sample assignments, are obviously can be really helpful sometimes. I mean, I remember that was always something that was really helpful for me as a student, just to be able to see some, A+ examples of work before, I started to do something myself, just so I could, see how to, what the expectations were, what good work meant in this particular situation. And I think, that can really, help, a student understand what the expectations are of the course. Rubrics are built into some of these Canvas pieces. Where am I? Linux content adaptive collaborations. It's under settings. But I think, rubrics are valuable for courses because, they kind of force the instructor to be consistent when you're grading. They can give a student an idea about, expectations again, which also help with learning. And they can also be used in, assessments. I mean, you can ask, say, students to take rubrics and assess other students' work, so that, that's another type of like assignment that you could have your students do. And let me look for this attendance analytics. Oh, there we are. And so this outcomes link here within Canvas is a place where you can set up your rubrics for different assignments or different objectives, and just let the students know exactly what their score is. It helps you to, like I said, maintain consistency when you're grading courses, and it sort of just helps you as the instructor and the students understand really what the main goals of this course are, and just sort of keep a lot of the assessment, the objectives, and things like that organized within a single location. And I can go into those outcomes further in another session. It's honestly something that I need to look into a little bit more myself. Course accessibility. I think if we think about the purpose of our university is for to create equity in the world, that it's going to be important for us to make sure that people who have say issues or difficulties in the online environment, that we think about them and make sure that we are accommodating all people. And one of the settings here in Canvas to make sure that that's being done is this feature that's on all the different pages. Just check for accessibility, which what that does is it makes sure that, say, for example, a person who has vision problems, if they're using like a text reader to read these pages to them, we can make sure that, say, this image has an alternative text, so that if you as the instructor are using an image, say a map, to explain something within the content, that you also have some text that explains that also. Let's see, this is a table, and so I think some readers have a difficulty going through tables within web pages, and so that's a fairly straightforward way to make sure that the pages within your course are accessible to people who have sort of special needs, maybe some vision problems or problems with movement. And then some of these other accessibility pieces are about color and appeal and making things easy to read. I think there's a reason that most books are published with black text on a white background. It's just easy. Text is easier to read that way. And so I think it's important to, obviously think about some of those pieces. Color also increases attractiveness. I mean, people are more likely to stay on web pages longer if, sort of the overall look of the web page is appealing to the eye. Images are used to support course content. I think attractiveness, of course, is important, but also it's important to make sure that, if you're posting images, that they do relate back to the course content and information that you're trying to get across. Using different styles, paragraphs, headings, etc., to organize your content, of course, is going to be important. And I think that plays back into, that I think it's helpful to think about when you're designing your modules and your course content, your pages, to think about how that you're really designing like an online book, and you have headings for different sections, and then you have the information for that section, and then it's separated by having the heading for the next page. So I just think that's kind of a useful model to sort of help you to imagine, what you're creating. What is this? And then some other of these accessibility pieces, audio. If you're going to post a podcast, then it's also helpful to have the transcript for that podcast available too, so that if your student is deaf or has hearing problems, that they're able to read that information. And again, also for this, tables are used appropriately, because like I mentioned before, there may be difficulties for students reading different materials using page readers. And so that's the course evaluation checklist. I think if you're planning on building a website or building a course in Canvas, or you're improving a course that's in Canvas, I really think this is a key document that you should print out, keep by your side, review, look at, make sure that, especially I think these first two pieces, is essential and best practice elements are a part of your course. I'm here to help you and assist you to put these pieces together, because I really just want us to be able to make the best courses that we can here. And I think this is a piece that will start us down in that direction. So that's kind of all I've got for now. Does anybody have anything they'd like for me to talk about further with any of the examples that I was just giving? Or
Hi, Matt.
Hi. Yes.
It's Joshua here. Yeah.
Hi, Joshua.
Yeah, I just saw my screen that Matt left, so I was wondering which Matt left. Looks like you're close to one of the devices.
I didn't know there was more than one, I guess.
That's okay. Thank you very much. And I think, just as usual, this is quite helpful, and it's quite clear that we are getting better by the day. There's this thing that I would like you to talk about. So it's more like something that it would be good if you can talk to us about it. It's about branding our course interface, sort of. And how do I mean by that? There's this consistency that runs through pages of websites of certain organizations, either by virtue of the fonts they use, the color mixture, the logos. Without seeing their names, you can always see that trademark running all through whatever belongs to such organizations. UGH has a logo, has color codes, and other things. But it's important that this is incorporated into every form of identity that we have, including Canvas. So how could we do that? I've seen this typical design that begins most of our PowerPoint materials, for instance. That's great. So when it comes to our Canvas pages, how can we ensure that our students become so used to that identity, that brand, that they don't have to struggle each time they come to figure out things? We've been able to deal with the issue of consistency, but talking about the aspect of branding, how can we achieve that much better than we've done before? I think that, is it clear to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And yeah, it's definitely something that we're going to have to figure out. And we have actually we have an EDQC meeting later today, and I will bring that up there because I think that's something that we can figure out a response to. I was in this course, I had set up, I was sort of working with some branding ideas, with this where, we have the UGHE logo, maybe some photos of activity, campus, the students, because I've seen this used by some other universities where, it's not just, say, a blank logo, but you actually have some student life. And so I think that gives it sort of, makes it a little more interesting, I think, for people. So I think this is what you're talking about, right? Is just sort of a consistency of images in terms of branding the pages.
You're right, Matt.
Okay, I will definitely make this a priority. It's something that I've had in the back of my mind, and I'm just I don't know. I definitely need to kind of get that nailed down. I completely agree with you.
All right, thank you very much.
Does anyone else have anything else to add, or?
Hi, Matt.
Yeah.
Eugene. Yeah.
Hi.
So, thank you very much for this informational session. I've seen that you have added in the library, and it seems that the library immediately connects to all the sources that the student would need, or the student would still have to go through the librarian to get access to the resources?
I think what will have to happen as far as that goes will be that the instructor will have to communicate with Anthony which materials they would like to see within the library webpage that the students need for their particular courses. And I'm just going to share my screen again here. For example, right now, what is out there, say under this library resources page, and see, we've done some branding on this site. And I think for some of these, we're still waiting for materials. So for example, this basic, these are links to different books on anatomy. So they're resources that can assist with these specific courses or topics. And that's kind of where the different materials that we have available right now, mostly for the MBBS, obviously.
Theo, probably I could jump in here and say that what we have currently on the site is the books that we have in the library, the hard copies. we've been able to get the soft copies, and that is what we have. For anybody else who would want to give us any other material or has some other material, I would advise you to go to the library page, check out if your books are there. If you have additional books that you want to be put in there, you kindly talk to me, and I will see how to get the e-copy or soft copy, PDF copy of the same, and put it up there. Otherwise, what we have, the hard copies of of the books we have currently in the library are what we have as PDFs here within the library site.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
thanks, Anthony. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
so the student will only have access to what you guys will have provided. It's not access to the resources of the library.
But it's the same. The resources in the library are the same that are here within the library page. So what is in the actual physical books that we have in the library, 90% of them are now, we've been able to get licenses for the PDFs, and that is what we have put onto Canvas. I don't know if I'm getting you or if that is okay.
Yeah, it's okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe Anthony, maybe I should just still ask one more question about access to books.
Yes.
This type of access through those platforms, is it that the student have direct access to the specific book that instructors have put there for them, or they have access to the library and they could explore on their own? Because that's another way to access the library. So which one specifically? Thank you.
Well, the way we've worked with Matt is that it is both ways. The students can go, for example, as Matt was sharing his screen, there was, for example, anatomy. So all the books in anatomy or talking about anatomy are already uploaded. So the student you can tell the student use this particular book, but all other books that we have in relation to anatomy are also there. So it is both ways. You can explore using other books, or that particular book the course director or course tutor has referred you to.
All right, thank you very much.
Probably just to add that I would encourage us to go into the library page and look at the books that we have uploaded. If there is any extra book or something that you feel that we need to add, you could shoot me an email and we go and see how to do it. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
I will also make it a priority when I'm starting to work with certain faculty on their online courses to let them know that we do have a library page, and just if they want some special materials or resources linked in there, that it's something that's available. Instead of linking everything within the course. So. Well, thank you all for coming and staying and your questions. And so enjoy the rest of your day, and please let me know if you need anything. I will send out that if you've received the survey through email, please fill it out. And I will take note of the people who have sent me messages in the chat to send it to them too. So sorry about that. So that wraps it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks and bye.